2 words. Julio and Jones.
Yeah,
Yes.
traded for Julio Jones, and they bring him in. That's the really, really big news that, we've really only talked about with this team, but there were actually some really good other signings for this team as well. I mean, namely Bud Dupree coming in as an edge rusher for a team that really, really, really needed that, like badly. And then they signed Janoris Jenkins as well, a corner, which they needed to do because they lost Adoree Jackson. So you do have Janoris Jenkins coming in. You got Danico Autry as well, who's going to be, pretty big signing for them. He's going to start on the defensive line as well. You've got Kendall Lamb on the offensive line that will at least battle for a starting position. He might just be a depth signing at this point, but he could end up actually starting for this team as well. And then they also kind of an under-the-radar deal, because whenever you sign a wide receiver who's named Julio Jones, you don't really talk about the other wide receiver that you signed. But Josh Reynolds signed with the Titans as well, a guy that has a lot of snaps for the Rams over the years. Specifically when there were injuries, he would start for the Rams and get some decent run. But he's going to get a chance to be the third wideout here for this Titans team and actually play a lot. And so we'll see what Josh Reynolds is going to be able to bring to the table. On the draft side of things, Caleb Farley, they take in the first round, a corner. He opted out of the 2020 season, and then it came out right before the draft. They ended up having like a small procedure on his back right before the draft, which had him actually fall all the way to the Titans at 22. He was not predicted to be around that long, in the draft. But once it came out that he had a procedure on his back, there were a lot of teams who kind of backed off and everything like that. And so the Titans ended up picking him up with the 22nd pick. Now, if he is healthy and plays to the level, I mean, he was one of the guys that, again, we talk about these people that scout this way more than us, Pro Football Focus, Football Outsider, stuff like that. Like Caleb Farley was right up there with all of the other big corner names that were in the draft.
He was one of those when pardon me, they showed the highlight package of him. You're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it was, had that not happened, he certainly would have gone much, much higher than he did in the draft. They draft an offensive tackle with their second round pick. He was a guy that played at North Dakota State. He blocked for Trey Lance at North Dakota State. He didn't allow a sack his entire junior season. I would say his senior season, but they only played one game. So also his senior season. So that's a great stat. You say in my final 2 seasons, I didn't allow a sack.
Single one.
Yeah, not a single sack. Yeah, but only one game there for the senior season.
Because I didn't see out there.
Yeah. Linebacker Monty Rice in the 3rd round. They got another corner in the 3rd round, Elijah Molden. So you can see where they were kind of focusing there, trying to get that secondary kind of short up as well. They drafted a wide receiver in Des Fitzpatrick in the 4th round, and then a defensive end in Rashad Weaver in the 4th round as well. All expected to get at least time in the rotation. Where this team finished last year, according to DVOA, Football Outsiders, guys that we really respect over there, 4th overall offense, but 29th overall defense. And that was really kind of the thing here when we talked about this Titans team a lot last year. We were like, one, they were great at bully ball. They were able to bully. If they got ahead, they could sit there and kind of hold that lead or something like that. But the problem, if they ever fell behind, it was the explosiveness on the offensive side, and then also just the defense was really kind of bad in that secondary. ESPN ranks them as the 13th best overall roster in the NFL heading into this season, which lets you know even some of those key losses, they feel pretty good about, one, the draft picks, and then what they did in free agency. And, of course, the trade for Julio Jones doesn't hurt either. Pro Football Focus, 13th power-rated team, 3.4% Super Bowl win probability according to their predictions, according to their simulations, projected at 9.5 wins. So you can see PFF has them exactly on their win total right now after they ran this thing. They run 10,000 simulations, and so they came out with an average of 9.5 wins for this Titans team, which is exactly right on their number. Offensive line, as we know, what do they do well? They run block very well. You have a guy in Derrick Henry who's just dominated the league for the last few years, and 14th best rated heading into 2021. Last season they were 6th overall in the league in run blocking, but they were 25th in pass blocking. So they definitely had something in the offseason they needed to address. Keep in mind, Taylor Lewan, one of the very best offensive linemen in all of the league, didn't play a ton last year. He was injured. He was in and out of the lineup a ton. And so he is supposedly healthy as we head into this season. So that should help this offensive line and certainly help from a pass blocking standpoint as well, where they really underperformed last year. But Lewan is a stud. Center Ben Jones is another guy that's been about as consistent as you're probably going to get. And then, we just mentioned they took a offensive tackle in the 2nd round. He's going to compete for at least a starting job, maybe even the right tackle job, depending on how things all play out. So their offensive line still a little bit up in the air in that one. The defensive line was really a major concern, and that's what I was talking about. You could see in what they did with their offseason moves and then the draft as well. They bring in Bud Dupree, Danico Autry as well. Then I talked about the draft picks. They bring in, another linebacker, and that was one of the big things because they were only recorded 19 sacks, Gil. That's it.
Wow.
Last year. 19 sacks for this entire team. They ranked 29th in the NFL in pressure rate. And as we know, in a passing league, if you're not getting sacks or pressure, then you are really behind the 8 ball. And so they've got to
lose.
And so they bring in, a Bud Dupree, they bring in a guy that can really cover in Janoris Jenkins, they bring in Danico Autry. So they brought in guys that they are hoping make instant impacts as far as getting that swung around here, because if you're not getting sacks or pressure in today's NFL, it is bad situation, because if you just let these guys sit back and throw all day long, I mean, listen, that's what we're gearing this whole every team is gearing towards passing more.